I'm Rob Strechay, Managing Analyst with TheCUBE Research, and today we're going to talk to Ed Walsh, CEO, and Thomas Hazel, CTO and founder from Chaos Search. Welcome back to TheCUBE to both of you, and really excited to have you both here today.
Thanks for having us. It's always great.
Yeah, and especially because this is a launch day, so
Sure.
I think this, it's always a little bit more exciting when there's fresh stuff to talk about.
It is.
So let's kind of dive into that. What is Chaos Search announcing today, and how does that really change what you guys do?
I'll take the first shot. So listen, today we're launching Chaos LakeDB. So it's a data lake database. In fact, it's been the foundation of our SaaS-based service for years, and I'll go through it in a little bit. But we're announcing it's also available, the Chaos LakeDB, as an embedded database for service providers. You take your standard cloud object storage and we transform it into a hot analytic database. And now we didn't say we put a database on top or ETL out of S3. What we do is we make it actually a hot analytic database. And then we provide rich analytics. So think about Elasticsearch type of analytics or Elasticsearch API or SQL analytics. And then of course, GenAI on top of it. So you simply stream your data into any of your object storage around the world and it's available immediately for hot analytics. We deal really well with the operational use cases and business use cases. Think about operational use cases would be, think about observability or security lake use cases, but also what you do a business use case. All that data is the digital footprints of everything going on in an application that's really important to the business side. So our end users end up having the capability of having literally save time, cost, and complexity. They free up their time from managing all these complex pipelines, managing these different clusters. They unify these use cases, but also they save costs. So we're saving 50 to 80% hard dollars while giving people a lot more retention, which is what they're really trying to do in their environments.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that a little bit later, because I think that, again, getting through this, and a little bit of a data geek myself, so I think getting down into why LakeDB is different, and we got Thomas here we can both geek out a little bit on this, because I think it really, to me, having seen a lot of different, database and lake house announcements, I mean, bringing the two together, what was the thinking behind that? Because I think there's extreme advantages, and I know, we were talking about things like ingest and others. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really key for people to understand.
Well, back in 2016, the idea of transforming your object storage into a high-performance, at-scale, real-time database seemed a little strange, odd. Now, it makes a lot of sense, but the idea was that's where all the data was going to, because they're worried about their pipelines failing, their databases failing, so they're streaming it to services like S3. And so I thought, well, what if I could transform that data where it lives into a search, a SQL at-scale database? You're thinking not small data, we're talking billions to trillions of events, we're talking about terabytes to petabytes, but do in a way that is cost-effective and simple. So we're a database with a lake philosophy, and that's the big change. That's the big difference, where a lot of times you think about data pipelines and ETLing and schema definitions. No, stream it into your lake of choice. We auto-discover the schema, we index it without you having to worry about it, but we publish well-known APIs like Elasticsearch API, no Elastic under the hood and all that pain, or the SQL API with Trino as our export, and then this GenAI, conversations with your data. It's a 1, 2, 3 punch.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because it becomes part of a strategy for an organization, and it can be embedded underneath. You're not just selling Chaos Search anymore. You're selling actually the LakeDB underpinnings, which you guys have spent years. I mean, again, this is years in the making, but it's not a V1. This is V whatever, 6 years later or 7 years later, right? So it's been fully tested out and vetted at scale.
And if you think of why these service providers or platform providers are looking for this technology, it's pretty simple. You get architectural simplicity, but they're innovating on the application layer or the model layer, especially with GenAI. We see a lot of model innovation, and we're innovating on the data layer, right? So a lot of people, they're integrating what they can do on the data layer. They're not innovating on it. So we're a natural fit for them. So what they get is they're able to give their customers, hey, I can give you the cost-effective retention you're looking for. And they're looking for a lot more retention for a lot longer. And it's hard to do if you don't have this innovation, but also allows you the architectural simplicity without doing a whole bunch of tiering. Some of these are 5 or 6 different type of tiering to get the cost effectiveness. Even then, they don't get the capacity. but it's really the COGS. Like, so we talk about this cost of goods, but for these big service providers or cloud service providers, let's say they have a 60% margin business, just do quick math and that's a good margin, maybe not world class, but literally if we can take that 40% cost of goods, and in these platforms, 80% plus, 80 and 90% of that cost is actually the platform itself, the network, the compute, the storage to do all the analytics. If we can free up 50 to 80%, literally they're seeing their margins go from 60% to 76%, 86%, and that's like game changing. And that's like, okay, they're making more money, I get it. No, it's billions of dollars in valuation, which changes overnight.
Yeah, and I think in Gen AI's case in particular, you're seeing a lot of people saying, I want to have this LLM, or as we would call them SLMs, a segmented language model over here, and then I want this one over here, and I want this one over here. So maybe this is for the CFO's organization, maybe this is for the marketing's organization, where they're trying to keep it private. So I think, again, you hit on it a little bit briefly, but the being able to be anywhere in the world with the data being localized so that you can meet those regulations like GDPR and a number of the different European ones, and some of that's coming to Canada, and I think it's PIPA up in Canada, and all of these things that really are key. But how does that affect the latencies, and how does that affect the performance? Because that's the key.
I mean, everybody wants their data in object storage like S3. It's cost effective, secure, durable, available all over the world. However, it's slow, or at least thought of to being slow. It's thought of as an ETL location or archival. Well, the audacity of us, we have academic papers, on our website to take a look, but we had the audacity to come up with new computer science, new architecture that allowed that first read to be high performance. And that's something that with existing technologies like Lucene or Parquet, it's really hard to do. But what we did was we created a new representation, a new architecture that allows large-scale search, large-scale relational joins, and do it in a way that it's just automated like a lake would want to be, but do it in a high-performance way without that tiering, without that cost. And that's how we're uniquely priced. And we can talk about pricing later, but the idea that when you're dealing with that type of scale, I mean, everything's expensive, and we uniquely drop that price because of the innovation, because of that low latency. Chaos LakeDB.
And I'll give you an example of that. So land your data in anywhere of any of your S3 locations or GCS locations around the world, and it's in your dashboard and in the world in a minute. It's amazing what we can do. Now, we are leveraging, and in fact, the GM of Amazon S3 gave us a really good quote for the announcement, because it's the attributes. We pick up the attributes. Our attributes for a database are based on the attributes of S3. Think about all the durability, the security, the availability of those solution sets. Land it, and it's available immediately, so you pick up all those attributes. But literally, it's literally land anywhere in the world, and it's in your dashboard in a minute, and queries are in seconds.
We don't have provision storage, right? It is a service. Think about, we have customers go from, let's say Black Friday, 50 terabytes of ingestion per day up to 500. We don't have to provision that storage. We just have elastic compute that scales up, scales out, or scales down.
And the innovation is now to make that fast, right? So, and that's where the 6 patents go. Anyway, so this is why we're excited about solutions.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good jumping off point, because customers want to understand what's in it for them. And I think you have some pretty big customers who really have, really leaned into LakeDB. And one of them in particular was Equifax, who just released a white paper with you, which they don't take lightly on that stuff, having been on that side of the fence. So what was the story with Equifax, and how are they using it?
Yeah, so if you go across, I'll jump, and then you jump in. Listen, I think if you go across all our customers, the story is very consistent across all of them, but I'll talk about Equifax specifically. But if you look at Klarna, Cloud Imperial Games, Cisco, Equifax, consistent. What they do is they look at a unified data, like they bring things together, and they're able to do a lot of consolidations, but also automation. So what Equifax did is again, it's similar. They are able to save, in fact, they're after 2 years in production, and it is hard to get these things in writing, but a 90% hard dollar savings, 9% savings on what they're doing. But they went across multiple divisions, and they're running across both Amazon and Google. They're isolating their data where they need to isolate it in different geographic areas for different business units, but they're able to, again, you aggregate and consolidate all that data to one platform, and then what you're doing with the platform we have, you give stateless compute to different groups to spin up. They're not conflicting with each other, to use this one unified data lake for both operational and business. So they're using it for operational use cases, observability, or they're all using it for security lake as well. And then they always have the business side that wants to get after that data sets and go after. So their case study is actually on the website. I love the quote from Jeff Kinsherf, ran worldwide SREs. He's gotten a big promotion since, but again, a great executive. But he looked at technology and said, listen, I don't have to think about where I'm landing data. It's just there to query, which if you think about, that's, think about all the things that are leaving out.
In database worlds, that doesn't
happen,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not the pipeline, pipeline to that data lake and that data lake and that data lake, and I have to replicate it from here to here. That's all taken care of in the platform, largely based upon this fabric of this object storage. The other one, he says, also I looked at disparate solutions around analytics, and to bring it back together, I save a lot of time and complexity. So you'll see that pretty consistently, but yeah, Equifax is a great customer. It's a great customer study. It's right on the website as well.
Yeah, and when we started talking to them early on, now this is many years ago, they were moving to the cloud, and they had a conceptual architecture that they want to have to build out their business units. And we were the only company that had that vision of transforming your data lake into this, elastic analytical fabric that allows business users to quickly and easily. And that was the key thing. I want a new stream of data to be available within the day, not weeks and months of toil that typically goes on.
Yeah, I think that to me is one of the biggest things. Is the ingestion is always a problem. There's people who've written, hey, we're going to land it in S3, and then we have an ODBC driver that we've gone and open source built, and now what's the scalability of that? What's the complexity of that? This is all gone, right, with what you're doing.
Well, not only do you have to make object storage fast, right? That's hard enough. But the idea that if I could have a data lake philosophy, we know what lakes are great, just stream in opaque data and then worry about it later. But that takes time, that takes cost and complexity. We had the audacity again to say, what if we auto-discover the data stream, fully index it, and allow you to publish views, virtual views that can be search or SQL. And if you did that, think about all the complexity of setting up a pipeline, the complexity of setting up your schema. Now, with our technology, you can virtually change the schema after it's been ingested. You don't have to worry about re-indexing, particularly at petabyte scale. And so solving that problem of stream it in and immediately get notified to index it and make it available, that's something that no one does. Right. And particularly in this lake warehousing viewpoint, that's something that it's more of a warehouse than a database. With this live ingestion, we're more like a database than, say, a lake could ever be.
Right. And if you think about the other thing about this, the pipeline, it's a lot of time and energy, and everyone wants to avoid it. But also, we're taking close to raw, give it to as raw as you can, and we're indexing that fully. It allows you to later, the pipeline naturally, you throw out data. You're literally trying to put unstructured data into structured schema. You are literally you're deciding in advance what you're not going to keep. And then, of course, if you don't cost effective, they're not even keeping whole lineage of log types because they just can't afford it. With us, cost effectively do it, but we take it as raw as you want, nested, JSON type of artifacts. And then later, you can go through it in any level of detail. Now, once you unleash things like GenAI on it, now to have all that data in one unified repository and in its full nature, not something that's been parsed down as small as you can because you can't afford it otherwise, that's where the power really comes out. And that's where we see that GenAI is kind of a rally cry of you really can use and you should have all your data points.
And you want schema on read flexibility that the lakes promised, but it was slow. Schema on read flexibility with schema on write performance. And that's what we're trying to bring to the market.
Yeah, and I think, again, having the Gen AI on top of it, also let's put it mildly, we've talked about it, and budgets are not getting any bigger. How are you going to understand how to use the data and make the data usable? Having that Gen AI as that co-pilot-ish thing that can help you find out and see the insights in your data, because it's beyond what you can, us humans can think of. It sees relations. It'll make those people who are the DBAs better at what they do, help them come up with better queries. That's where you're going with that, right?
And we jumped in really early on this Gen AI path that now it's all over, right? And the idea that, now we don't share data with the LM, particularly public LMs, but we use the LM as a reasoning engine to help us ask intelligent questions on our database. And then you can think about it. You may say, I'm a security analyst. How do I discover failed logins over the last 5 years. And having that conversation without necessarily being a security expert or understanding SQL or understanding Looker or Tableau type controls, having that conversation to provide those answers with the LM, with our database, it's a great combo.
Yeah.
It's definitely a rally cry in the industry. And if you haven't really looked at what these tools can do for you, and we do see it going from our first move was using the public model in a safe way, but we see people now, and it's our ability to orchestrate between the application, the model innovation other people are doing, our superpower is getting all this data cost effectively together. Yeah. But then what we do is you bring these things in. So if you use a public model, we allow you to use it without sharing anything with the public model, but also at scale. Well, as we see people using different private models, that's the innovation, and integrating that and orchestrating that is a natural act of what we do in the back end.
And that's why having Search and SQL, there are certain questions you need to ask that one type of database really can't solve. And so through chain of thought, unique prompting that we do, you can ask Search and SQL questions to really derive the value that you're trying to seek out. And no hallucinations, because we don't ask the LM for the answer.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So, great announcement today, and things are coming. Where should people go to find more out about this?
Yeah, come to chaossearch.com. I think a couple things I'd point out is you'll see a lot of the information about the LakeDB. Thomas mentioned this white paper. We actually took the original academic white paper of that technology. We dusted off, put a cover sheet on it. But for those that really want to go deep at what we did and how it's different, architecturally different, and you also see how it's not a simple tweak of existing architectures. They also have a good product white paper that goes through it as well. And then, of course, the Equifax case studies right on the website.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think having read a lot of these white papers myself, I think getting into the nuts and bolts of what's going on, especially for data teams, and what we see as data developers, the development of the data developer who's building the applications on top of the data, being able to understand, again, to have Search, have SQL, and GenAI all in one place across your data is pretty powerful, to put it mildly. So I want to thank you both for coming on board and sharing this with us, because I think, again, it's a lot of fun. We're looking and always trying to bring things to organizations that can help them really get a better feel for how their data can be used and how they can be more effective and cost effective in that use as well. So thank you very much for coming by.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and for here and understanding and taking advantage of this news on LakeDB's capabilities. And with the launch of LakeDB, we can't wait to hear more as this evolves and the technology continues to evolve. I want to thank you all for watching, and stay tuned.